Today's episode is brought to you by Positively Productive Systems, whose mission is to be the antidote to your stress and to provide compassionate productivity resources and coaching that help you heal and achieve. Be sure to check out both free and paid resources at positivelyproductive.com/resources.
Take a step back from your life and look. Maybe at the past week, what are the things that have happened in the past week that made you happy? Talking to a friend, going out with someone. Does that give you a spark? Do you get excited about it? Or is it a do, going, the calendar's full, here we go, next thing. So look back and see, wait a minute, are there some things that I could change? Do I have to do everything? Do I have to do it all? Can I ask for help?
You're listening to the Positively Living Podcast. I'm your host, Lisa Zaratny, founder of Positively Productive Systems and a coach certified in time and stress management, helping overwhelmed clients make space for what matters. Join me each episode as we explore ways to live a more proactive, productive life with topics and guests that speak to simplifying self-awareness, systems, and so much more. I understand overwhelm personally as a fellow multi-passionate entrepreneur, wife and mom to kids and cats, and former caregiver. I'm here to help you choose what's right for you so you can do less, live more, and breathe easier. Sound good? Let's get to it. Welcome to the Positively Living Podcast. I'm your host, Lisa, and I'm so grateful you're here listening. I appreciate the time we spend together talking about the different topics that impact our lives and our ability to do less, live more, and breathe easier. Quitting is one of them. What was that now? Yes, I said quitting is a great way to do all those things. Under the right circumstances, it could be a good thing despite what the motivational posters would have you believe. Vince Lombardi coined the phrase, winners never quit and quitters never win. I'm sure you know that one. And it's a reminder to stay focused and persevere in the face of challenges. And it's a good philosophy, especially in that arena. The idea that we might give up too soon can be especially problematic in sports and as an entrepreneur. I get it. It's important to stick with things. But surely this doesn't mean never, ever quit, does it? Surely this doesn't mean if you quit, you're not going to manage to win. For that matter, what does it even mean to quit? I think we're looking at it all wrong, especially in the context of exploration that we all need in life and maybe need a little extra as a multi-passionate. So where do we draw the line? How do we assess the situation properly and decide when it's time to release what doesn't serve us anymore or break away from something or someone that's toxic to us? Today, I invited a special guest to explore this topic with me because she specializes in a kind of quitting that is highly stigmatized, divorce. Paula Lesso was comfortable in her marriage for years, and all that changed in the blink of an eye. She took her situation and embarked on a personal journey to find new comfort and started living her best life. She now encourages women to do the same in their marriage, whether it's a go, no-go scenario, if they're in the throes of divorce, or in post-divorce. Her purpose is to help women find happiness. As we chat today, we reframe the concept of quitting and share the stories we tell ourselves that keep us from doing it when it's necessary. We also discuss the signs that tell us it's time to let go, and we discuss it in the context of projects and people. Paula shares her 3H perspective on how to assess where you are and what you need to do, and you'll notice so much of her advice reflects other conversations we've had here surrounding reflection, change, and choice. As a support to this conversation, you may want to go back a bit into the podcast lineup. There are some amazing deep cuts, if you will, I think you'll really appreciate, like episodes 30 and 33 on feeling the fear while taking action and how we handle change. There's episode 41 on intentional happiness and episode 66 on trusting your gut to make the right choice. Most recently, episode 158 is on the benefits of therapeutic journaling. The key here is neither to quit nor not quit. It's to understand what's best for you and honor that in your action. If you need to, feel free to think of quitting as a form of decluttering, because even though I didn't actually mention it in our conversation, you know I was thinking it. I'd love to know how you feel about quitting and what your favorite ahas were for this episode. You can message me at positivelyproductive.com/connect. Now let's join Paula to talk about our freedom to quit. Welcome to the Positively Living Podcast, Paula Lesso. I am so delighted to have you here today.
Oh, I am super excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
I would love it if you would tell us a bit about who you are, who you help, and perhaps most importantly, what makes you light up?
Oh, that's a great question. I love that. I'm someone that helps women. I actually guide them through the tough times, especially when my focus is the divorce piece, which can be a really difficult time in a woman's life, whether it's a go, no go scenario. You think you're unhappy and they might be too, but you think that's the only way out and it may not be. Or in the throes of divorce or the post-divorce, that could be just as emotional as any other part of it. And so I'm there to help them with that experience, getting through it so they don't have to maybe go through the depths of the experience like I did. What lights me up is when they get that aha moment, asking them a question and then they start answering it. It was like, oh, and they get it because really it's inside of us what we really want. It's about helping get it out, asking the questions and asking, because I'm not there to give them advice or tell them how to do it. If I do that and they go do whatever I say and it comes back and it doesn't work, they're going to be looking at me going, that didn't work. And it's like, okay, what's in you? What feels right? That's where I excel, I guess, is being at that point of asking that question that triggers that aha moment for them.
And that, I think, is a moment for coaches that you absolutely love, because you're right. They need to find that aha moment themselves, and you are there to encourage it. And that's what we'll do today. The topic of the day, which I thought was really so perfect for someone who works with those who have been divorced or thinking about, the whole process, whether they're thinking about it, doing it, going through it, having been through it. Divorce has such a stigma to it, and it's a really big and unfortunately stigmatized example of quitting. So I'd love it if you'd share a bit about, this idea of quitting. It can be in the context of divorce as well as other things, but what does it mean to quit? And what are the stories that we tell ourselves about quitting?
Well, the stigma with quitting is, especially divorce or anything really, is that you put so much effort into it that the quitting piece, let's just struggle and keep going. And sometimes we wait because we don't like the quitting piece. It's easier to stay in our comfort zone. So the quitting piece is like, oh, it's going to be tough. And we don't want those feelings. And basically that leads to procrastinating. And so we let it linger and linger, right? And that could be whether it's in your career, becoming an entrepreneur, even with friends. Sometimes they say, you be with the people that cheer you on, that are your cheerleader. They're going to support you all the way. And sometimes we have to quit them. You're better off for it in a sense. And it's tough to see it. And that's why it's highly recommended, that you actually talk to a coach of some kind, whether it's a divorce or a life coach or a business coach, because there's so much that we have going on in our heads. But it's that hamster wheel and the drama and the stories, right? What I say is it's best to have your head and your heart and your health in line. to get you to happiness. Knowing what is the right thing for self, right? For yourself. And when you're in alignment with those 3 H's, you're no longer quitting. You're doing it for you. There's that stigma, especially like with divorce. Oh my God, this is my second divorce or my third divorce. And it's a shame. But what if? What if you quit? Or what if you left? And it's not quitting. It's to your better, higher self, your higher good. Just like with a position, job. I think sometimes we stay in jobs too long with managers that we're not happy. We just don't get along. It's that making that move, that change. Nobody really likes to change. And yet, if you knew what was on the other side, which we don't have that capability till we get there. And you look back and go, wow, that was a gift. I just gave myself a gift.
When you mentioned change, yeah, we are resistant to that. And I think it's because of the unknown. We've talked about this on the show before, and I plan to talk about it again. Nicole Mixdorf joined us and talked about change. And you've mentioned this too when you and I have chatted about whether you're choosing it or it's being thrust upon you. And in both of those cases, there's a hesitancy that we have. And I like the reframe that you offered, this idea I wrote down, quitting equals choosing better for you.
Yes.
So that's a reframe. And instead of quitting as in, I'm stopping this, to me, I think too often we think of it as like giving up.
Yeah. Because as I said, you put so much time and effort into things. And it's like, how can you leave that? How can you quit on something? Just like for kids, for example, they do sports and it's just not for them anymore. So I've heard parents say, well, she's quitting or he's quitting, the sport, and not really. They're really finding what's best for them, unless there's that distraction, depending on what it is. Again, their head or heart is out of sync. And when that topples, when one of the H's topples, it's really now that equals indecision. So you're really into indecision and your happiness is put on hold. It's in flux because your head, your heart, in your head, like I said, you're overwhelmed. And in your heart, sometimes you have that gut feel. And you're going, I'm going to choose this. I'm going to go this way instead of really where your heart says. And you kind of quit your heart. I mean, in a sense, you don't listen. And that's not always the best way to go. And then your health, I mean, if it's not 100%, that affects everything too. So yeah, so your happiness is put on hold and in flux. Quitting, wow, it has, like you said, so many connotations to it that it still can be a good thing.
Very much. And there's a huge freedom to it. And there's a huge, the concept of choice, right, is so very powerful. So the way that you're describing it, so we have quitting with, this whole idea of giving up. And I think this does come from sports a lot. So it's kind of interesting. And it's not about not persevering. It's about understanding if something is, and you just described it this way, not for you anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing is that I just talked with Eric Fisher on the podcast about seasonal planning and this idea of our lives having seasons. I love that, reason, season, lifetime idea. And we think about that with people. We can think about that with experiences that we have. It can come and go. Not everything is meant to stay. And this is especially so for multi-passionates because we tend to scan through things fast. But I'm curious, when you talk about head, heart, and health, maybe we could dig into that as ways to consider the signs that it's time to release something. And when you mention the head and being overwhelmed, is that overwhelmed with the idea of possibly quitting something or just the overwhelm itself? You know what? Let's dig into what the signs would be, and maybe you'll answer that question all in one.
Well, the head, like I said, there's the drama and all the stories. And the overwhelm, sometimes, there's a fight and flight. And I also say freeze because then you just don't do anything. Are you happy? Are you really happy? In the head, you've got all that stuff swirling around. And then if you can get to your heart, What is your heart really saying? And if you're not fulfilled, the other thing about quitting too, that I just want to make sure that people are aware of is, did you quit for yourself or for someone else?
Mm.
So there were times like I gave up stuff in my marriage. I let go of stuff because my husband didn't do it. I was like, oh, okay, well, then we wouldn't do that together. Like I golf, and you didn't golf, but I gave up golfing. I was like, why? I look back now and I quit because he didn't. And it just didn't seem like, okay, that's easy to let go of. But now it's like, oh my gosh. So are we quitting for ourselves or someone else? And when you recognize that, when you recognize I'm not happy, and that's the biggest thing is, you know, but it's facing that and admitting it. And sometimes it does take, journaling, speaking to someone else, just opening up and saying it. That's one way of knowing. Just knowing it's just not right. Does it serve you? And that's one of the biggest things. And then your health. How do you feel? Your body. What's it telling you? I'm just eating. I don't care, right? I'm not going to exercise. It doesn't matter. Those things, that's when you start recognizing that things aren't where you want them to be. You're letting go and you're just giving up. And that's, one thing of being careful about that. And I'm sure there are friends, family that try to talk to you and say they're trying to help you. You want to have an open ear if you can. That's the biggest thing. Try to hear them. Try to listen. Of course, the approach is always different, depending on who it is, right? If it's a relative or a friend, who you listen to more. And so that can make a big difference too. But your friends, I think, are going to have some of your best interest at heart.
And I wanted to clarify that when you say have an open ear, like listen to those who are around you who can see what's going on. And they have an objective, potentially, perspective, and one also, like you said, that has your best interests.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting when you were describing giving up, you were describing health as something that may suffer. So I'm thinking about, our connections to stress. So when something isn't right for you and you're really hurting, and then you have chronic elevated stress response, and that, of course, is linked to chronic health conditions, that can potentially be a sign. You're like, asking yourself, where does this come from? But then one of the ways you described it too was like the not caring about taking care of yourself and things like that. And you used the phrase giving up. And I thought, aha, isn't that interesting? When we were trying to say, okay, here's the concept of quitting, and it's not always like this giving up like it's a negative thing, but here you're talking about one of the signs potentially being giving up on yourself.
Yes.
Like, why bother? What's the point? And I was going to ask you about this idea that, like asking yourself, are you happy? And wanted to play devil's advocate with this, like, well, okay, not everything is sunshine and roses in life. So how do we make that distinction of, okay, sometimes I'm not happy and I can do something about it, or I just need to get through it, or I need to process it, or maybe I need a nap and a snack, in not necessarily in that order. I don't know. So how would you make the distinction between the I'm not happy where you're like, ooh, I better dig in more because I might need to do something big about that, versus I might just need the nap?
It's difficult sometimes, from this end of it, being able to see it is take a step back from your life and look, maybe at the past week, what are the things that have happened in the past week that made you happy? Talking to a friend, going out with someone, having some opportunity with your spouse, significant other, going to the children's events. Does that give you a spark? Do you get excited about it? Or is it a do, going, the calendar's full, here we go, next thing. So look back and see, wait a minute, are there some things that I could change? Do I have to do everything? Do I have to do it all? Can I ask for help? You feel like you want to quit some things sometimes, it's like, I'm doing it all. Yeah, you feel like quitting because you think you have to do it all and you don't. It's not about you doing it all. Think about who could help. And it's okay here's the other thing too. It's funny. It's okay if they don't do it exactly the way you do it, but they helped you and it took that off your plate. So maybe it gave you a little breathing room to be, okay, I can breathe. And the other thing is self-care. If you have to go take a 10-minute walk because you're ready to explode, you just have just so much anxiety or something right now, go take that 10-minute walk, take a break, take care of you. You're the most important person. Nobody else is going to do it for you. Or read a book, take that 10-minute nap or 20-minute nap. I have a friend that takes a 2-hour nap. I don't know how she does that, but it's all about self-care in the sense of the stress, the anxiety, the making sure everybody else is okay. And sometimes I think that's why we want to quit, just because we put so many things ahead of ourselves, people and things, that we feel like quitting. We feel like walking away. So if you could, I know, just go to your favorite coffee shop. That's what I love to do, is go to my favorite coffee shop. You're there by yourself. There's nothing else to distract you. And you're there maybe to make that list of, what are all the things that I do? Whoa, there's so many things. And what could I get rid of? And what could I delegate? That could make a different choice now instead of quitting.
It sounds like what you're describing, and it's an interesting way to look at this, so when we think of quitting, the first perspective, the stigma, of course, has to do with what I guess I would describe as quitting big. And then it's like, okay, how do we figure out when we need to quit big? Something's really not working for us. It's dangerous. It's problematic. But then there are other elements. So it's deciding what kind of I want to quit feelings that you may be having, in addition to the other stuff you talked about. You mentioned your health and when that wanes, and the fact that maybe you're like asking yourself, you're reflecting. Reflection is so important. Are you happy? What's your heart telling you? Then actually having feelings, or maybe even wanting to say, I quit, I'm done. But it's interesting. The spin you're offering is that part of that may be that you've placed yourself in, this is where I love to be as far as talking about this, because that's my productivity lens, is you've placed yourself in overdoing, overachieving, overtasking. And maybe what you need in that case is to quit small as opposed to quit big. It's not that you have to quit everything.
Right.
But that you have to quit doing, quote, so much, or doing, quote, too much for what feels right for you or is blocking you from doing. And what you're talking about with like delegating, I have the 4Ds, or I did, tackling your to-do list in 4 steps. And there's not only deleting, which is like, okay, we got to declutter this. Sometimes there's ish you can let go. But then there's also delegating, like you said, asking for help and being okay with that, and then delaying. Sometimes it's like you don't have to do it right away or right now.
Exactly. Yes. And I thought there were certain things that, got to get them done. And it's like, wait a minute, that's not the most important thing to be done right now. So I could delay that and get this other thing done, because there's so many things to be taken care of course. In anybody's life, there's a lot of things you can do, but it's like, okay, wait a minute. What about me first? And then take on the other things and add those back in gradually.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Start strong and work from there. Okay, so you mentioned something in our talk about, I think you at least intimated this idea of when we're thinking about quitting, or the types of quitting that might happen, that could involve people, that you want to be around your people. You want to be around supportive people. And then sometimes it requires, like I wrote down quitting in marriage, job, friends, like you can quit hobbies. There's lots of things and people you can quit. What are we looking for? Or maybe, what have your clients been dealing with that are like signs that we can be watching for when we're like, maybe these are some people in my life that I do need to quit?
A lot of signs they have seen, and we've talked about it, is that someone is just negative all the time. They'll get with that friend and they're just complaining. There's a lot of drama. There's nothing going right in their life. And they're just like, I just don't know that I can take that anymore. be around that person. I can, I want to help. I want to help them, but I don't know how. Or they don't listen. I'd say, what about, hey, have you tried this? And it's almost like they like the complaining. And it's like, if you don't want to be around that, don't be around it. It's okay. I'm sure they have other friends that they can go and complain to and be around. It's not as much fun as it used to be. Or they don't support you. They'll say something negative, or they're not supporting my client. And we also have to look at, are they jealous of what you have or what you're doing? Because sometimes it could be envy or jealousy. We take a step back. Like I say, you have to take a step back and really look at what's going on for you. We're so in the midst of it, so we can't see what's going on a lot of the times. So we need to okay, step back, just observe. That's when you can start and go, this person is positive. I like being around this person. We always have so much fun. Even if I haven't seen them in a while and talk on the phone or I'm with them, like we pick back up from where we're at. It's easy. And that's what you want.
All right. So that's definitely some important signs that we need to consider with people. And then with things, whether it's activities, whatever it happens to be, I think it seems like it goes back to some of those questions of, am I happy? Am I satisfied? Is this serving me? So those are the questions for that.
Right.
As we wrap up, is there anything else that we want to consider in terms of being able to monitor this as we go, making the best choices and, accepting those choices that we've made?
Oh, that's great. Yeah, accepting it, because giving yourself permission, that's one of the biggest things we don't. And I've actually said this to a friend, I give you permission to go do this. And we laugh about it. Giving yourself permission, like sometimes give myself permission to just go read. It's okay to just go take 10 minutes in the day if I really need that break and go read. It's okay. There's nothing wrong with it. But if you start feeling anxious or uncertain about something or it's just not comfortable, that's when you want to, the ears perk up like on a dog, right? The ears perk up, the senses. Sit for a moment. And if you don't meditate, it's okay, but just sit in the quiet for the moment. Just ask your heart, what's in my heart? What is it I really want? And that really does help. Thinking about that and breathing, taking a couple deep breaths and quieting yourself. Because we're on, like I said, the go so much. We're always moving or something, something's happening, in your life, how it is. And so just being able to do that is huge. And if you need to, write a couple ideas down. I know I have to because I'll forget them a few minutes after. It's like, what was that? It was so cool. It was such a great idea. So have some paper with you, especially when you start feeling out of sorts, and just kind of monitor where that's at. It's your head, your heart, your health. And then where can you go from there and go, okay, slow down, set down. What's the most important thing to be doing right now?
Yes, exactly. The overwhelm that we have and the constant busy. This idea of stepping back, taking stock, reflecting, and the fact that we are on the go all the time. We bring this up on the podcast all the time. It's that busyness. It's that distraction. So this is saying, take a moment, step back and check in with yourself. And everything that you are describing makes me feel that encouragement to not only check in with myself, but trust myself.
Yes, absolutely. Because you're not quitting on you. You're just taking a step back. And then you're like, oh, new energy. There's new energy. If things just aren't working out right and you're frustrated, literally stand up, turn around and sit down. And it's almost like, whoa, I can see with different eyes now. Something looks different. And it's true. You can walk away, come back. It's like, oh, yeah, that looks different. Oh, okay. Something you're working on or this situation. Now I can approach it differently. Okay, I see it. I hear it and I see it differently.
Right. And not everything is going to necessarily be about quitting, but you're stepping away, you're reflecting, you're checking in, you're doing all of these things. And then if it still stays with you that something's not right, then you know that you can quit and that the quitting is actually choosing what's best for you.
That's right.
Love that. Okay. I think that's a beautiful place to wrap up. So we have a little bit of a fun, rapid wrap up at the end here. But before we dig into that, would you tell us where we can locate you online and receive support from you in this regard?
Sure. The best way to reach me actually is through Paula at paulalesso.com. That's probably the best way to, I mean, you can even reach me on my Facebook and, Paula Lesso on Facebook too. And my book, you can go to Amazon or Barnes and Noble. What are you waiting for? Which is kind of a reflection on what are we waiting for? Because sometimes, like I said, we procrastinate or we just delay life. And what are you waiting for? Today's the best day to start living.
Love it. It's such a carpe diem phrase. Well, I'll make sure to have your book on the positivelyproductive.com favorites page.
Great.
So you can click right to Amazon and grab that. And now let's dig into this rapid wrap up with a little bit of fun. Are you ready?
I am ready. Okay.
All right. Fill in the blanks for me, please. A song that lifts my spirits and makes me dance is
Old Time Rock and Roll by Bob Seger.
That's a good one.
If I walk in somewhere and that's playing, I'm on the dance floor. And if there's a DJ, I will go up and ask for it.
It makes total sense. I'm going to add that to the Positively Living podcast, Spotify, dance playlist. We may still be on volume 3, but it's growing. Now, how about a quote or mantra that inspires me or that I love to share often?
This was a quote or an affirmation really that came through my counselor when I was going through my divorce. And I was having some anxiety. And so for my clients, I use this is I am safe. I am okay. I am safe. I am okay. No matter what they're going through.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I am safe. I am okay.
Yeah, that's such an important mantra. We need that safety in order to be able to focus and make the best choices.
Right.
All right. And now, how about a resource? It could be a book or an app, in addition to yours, of course. Anything really that has made your life better.
Well, I'm part of a book club. And recently we read The Motivation Myth by Jeff Hayden. He was like, what really motivates us is actually completing tasks motivates you to do more.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing was, and this is huge for me, was when you set a goal, forget the goal. I was like, how do you forget the goal? Wait a minute, forget the goal. Because concentrate on the steps to the goal. And I got thinking about this. You can set a goal, like a big, audacious goal, right? You're gonna want to get that goal. I want to get to Paris. Oh my God. But am I gonna have the money for it? And you start those negative, oh my gosh, this is overwhelming. How do I get there? Oh my gosh. And you may not get the goal, right? You quit your goal. You could quit your goal because it could be that. But when I was training for my half marathon, the half marathon was the goal. It was out there.
Mm-hmm.
But then I was with my group training and accountable and doing the steps to get there. So it built and built and built, step by step. And I got to the goal. And it was like, that's huge. Make your goal, but just don't make it so in your face, if you know what I mean, that it stares at you and you're like, oh, I don't know. And you could quit it. But get the goal. Yep, I'm going to make that goal. And then what are the steps to get there?
I love that you mentioned that because this is what I do as a coach. What you're talking about is Habits Management 101. James Clear also approaches this in Atomic Habits, BJ Fogg in Tiny Habits. This idea that you want to focus on the process and you want to focus on, like you said, taking the steps, and that automation that you're building into your life, and that repetition and that consistency will get you to your goal. And the other thing that you're talking about with this is when we have a concept that we can't quite wrap our brains around, it keeps us from seeing the path that we would take to get there, and it keeps us from believing that we can.
Mm-hmm.
But if you break it down, this is also project management 101, right? Where if you're like, okay, I need to get from A to B, what are the steps? What would I have to do? Then all you need to focus on is the next step, the next right step. And that is so on point. Super smart advice. And I will add one more thing, which again, I haven't read the book yet, but I will put it on the favorites page, is this idea that we say all the time on motivation, and really it is getting ourselves into the habit of it that will take us there. Motivation is the beginning point of wanting to do the thing, but it's the habits that will get us where we want to go.
Exactly.
Love that. Last, but definitely not least, what are you grateful for today, Paula?
I'm grateful for my dad. I am here hanging out with him. That's what we call it. I'm his caregiver. He's 97, but he's still very functional. Just slowing down body-wise, really. Some days a little slower than others. But I'm grateful that I could be here with him and hang out with him, and just enjoy this time with him. Yeah.
Beautiful. All right. Well, I am grateful for you and that we connected and that we'll stay connected because we're actually local to each other, which is wonderful. And I want to thank you so much, Paula, for shining your light in this world, challenging us to let it be okay to quit because we're choosing what's right for us, and for sharing your wisdom today. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you for joining me today. Your time is precious and limited, and I'm honored you chose to spend it with me. If you have feedback, questions, or want to schedule a chat, head to positivelyproductive.com/connect. And if you are looking for any of the resources referenced on the podcast, from books to products to training and more, go to positivelyproductive.com/resources.